What you're about to experience today is a story that's never been told, and it's about my multicultural experience. And you won't believe it because you can look at it from a scientific approach, but also let's look at the whole cultural picture here, including the history of things. This is something that I lived, and you need to hear it. And it's my multicultural experience, and it's not what you think, because you can't think it. That's why I'm telling it. Open your ears and let's live this moment as I tell this story. Robert Wilkins, aka BasketballTall. Have you ever left your state? Have you ever experienced other cultures? And I'm talking about, when I say cultures, yes, race is included. But what if you've always remained in a particular culture, such as in the Deep South, and that residue of slavery still lingers on in some places to a degree, and you have no knowledge what life is like outside of that realm? I'm going to share something with you, and I hope that it be an eye-opener for you, because it was for me. Because my perception of things growing up in the state of Louisiana and going through the old, what we call Jim Crow, don't go away yet, because it's not about what you think it is, but to share with you the multicultural experiences that I've had and how I perceive things today. Because growing up in the state of Louisiana, then of course, as we know, integration came about. And then having to go to a school in a different community from where I grew up, and experiencing the hate, the cars driving by, throwing objects at us, calling us all sorts of names. And I'm just in the 7th grade, having to walk to school because the bus didn't take us to school in that community. It was horror. Then go to another school in the 9th grade, then experience a race riot. War was at school. Police was there, ambulance services was there. They were fighting upstairs, downstairs, courtyard, teachers fighting. I'm watching this one coach going down, swinging like he was in a blaze of glory, being taken down by a bunch of students. Then, my junior year in high school, we get to travel outside of the state of Louisiana and got to play in a big high school basketball tournament in Oklahoma. And you had all these high schools from all around, boys and girls tournament at the same location. And seeing how people interact, I thought that was unusual. And then living on the college campus, and of course that night, 3 college students came to our dorm to see our basketball team, and brought some 210 Everclear with peppermint chopped at the bottom of it. And watching these guys, how they were touching each other, hugging each other. We have never seen anything like that. And having all these people coming around us, touching us. Native Americans, never seen one before until I came to Oklahoma. And even though Oklahoma is considered to be the South in many places, actually, it's an Indian territory that was set up by the federal government. And many of you may have heard about that in the history books, the Trail of Tears. That's another story. But interacting with all these people and coming from where I was, that was a no-no. And having people talk to us that we weren't normally talked to. I thought, wow, life is different in other places. Now, of course, I've been to East Texas and Arkansas and Mississippi, so when I say Deep South, there's a residual of that old history that still lingers to a degree. That goes off into Tennessee, Kentucky, North, South Carolina, and so forth. But then having the opportunity when I left the state, left that culture. And when I say culture, I'm talking about the Deep South culture. Now, of course, the North and all of that, they have their cultures as well. But when I got to venture to the Northwest, and then going to places like Colorado, New Mexico, off into California, Oregon, Washington. In these various places, I got to discover, oh, life is different in other places. Going to New York and to discover life is different in other places. Seeing people, how they interact. Now, imagine this. You never left your culture. You have a perceived notion of what life is like for those particular people. And I got to interact with those people. Can you imagine in the 1970s, it was a great migration of the black athlete, as told by ESPN some 20-something years ago. And I was talking to one of my good buddies, Jeff Coleman, who's a head basketball coach at Kirgo High School in East Texas. And we talked about that, how we came in 1976 to the state of Oklahoma and our experiences. He came from Shreveport, Louisiana, and I was from Monroe. And how we felt and thought about people slowly started melting away. Everyone that I looked at that wore cowboy boots and a hat, I thought they were prejudiced. Because from my history of watching television and the news back in the day, when you had Governor Wallace in, Alabama and so forth, he wore cowboy hats and boots. And so my perception of people like that were extreme. That was my thought process. And for those that I saw like that, now here I am in a state, a cowboy state, Native American state, actually, how we say cowboys and Indians. And I came to Oklahoma, and that's what I saw, a lot of it. So you can imagine what I was thinking. Prejudices. I had my own prejudices about them due to the residual of history. But to discover, hey, these guys, these are people, how they treated us and interacted with us. Now, of course, we know that there's prejudices everywhere. Let's face it. Why? Because there's sin upon the land. And we've all have sinned, every last one of us. And if someone said that they have never sinned, they lie. They're lying. Because all have sinned. Am I perfect? No, but neither are you. And the only one that we ever heard of that have not sinned came from the Bible, and his name was Jesus. For we all have fallen short and come short of the glory. But being in that environment, I discovered a lot of things about people. Went to college. Well, let's back up. Think about this. Coming from a state like Louisiana, where there's like 33% black population, then coming to a state like Oklahoma, you're looking at about 8%. Imagine that. 33%, 7%. Can you see the difference there? And then being around people who's telling me, I've never seen a black person. I have never talked to a black person. And I've been told that many a times. But how they treated me. How they treated, not just that, later on when I got married, my wife, my kids. Seeing the multicultural experience at work, and it was working. Because the United States became something that it never was. And what made that possible was our city, state, and federal laws and our Constitution. Everyone wants to be happy. Everyone wants to experience joy, love, prosperity, and peace. And then when I became a lawman, police officer, state district court juvenile officer, child welfare social worker, juvenile justice specialist, and supervisor of 5 counties. And being in many places, there weren't people like me. So, for those of you that may have lived in certain regions of this country, then you go to another place, you bring in that thought process with you. It doesn't matter your race, you're taking it with you. Until you discover otherwise from your interactions with others and discover the commonalities that we have. And in the 1970s, that great migration of the black athlete going mainly to white schools, because that was the time at the beginning of the 70s, 1970s, integration really took off. And the experiences that we had, and not just that, in the 1970s, it wasn't just the great migration of the black athlete, students too. We all started going to schools that once we were barred from going. And boy, and you're talking about breaking myths, because we all, in our social groups, environments, we all have these little myths about one another, how they this or they that. And then, and we come together and get to know one another, may get to live with one another, eat with one another, joke and laugh, may even sleep with one another. And to discover how common we really are because of our laws. That's what makes us Americans. That's why we behave the way that we do. When I was in Colorado, where my paternal family lived, and saw the interactions there where they actually lived, it was in a multicultural area, really. And I was like, wow. And then to discover, living in Oklahoma, the similarities, even though they all have their own history. But we have evolved so much that we can't even see it. And we still have some want to cling on to that old way of thinking and doing when that's gone. And to never go back again. Because we are a unique country compared to the rest of the world. And it's working. It's really working. How do I know it's working? I was a cop. Being a police officer and being involved in the criminal justice field, you interact with everybody. You go in their homes. You know the things that they're faced with, their struggles. You know how they live. You know the clothes they wear. You know the language they speak. And to discover, and for those of you that have never ventured outside of your culture, very similar. We all have the same problems, and we all seek the same things. Think about this. We live in a country where everybody's got guns. You might say, well, how do you know they got guns? I was a cop. I go into homes. I carried a gun, or guns. And I know no matter what race people are, everybody's got guns. So I think that in itself is enough for us to be peaceful to one another, don't you think? I understand white culture. As well, I understand my own. But imagine when you come from an environment of 33% blacks and then you go to a place where there's only about 7%. You can imagine I'm sticking out like a sore thumb. But it's how the people received me and interacted with me. One can say, well, but you're a law enforcement, you're a cop. It wasn't just that. It was everything. Have I experienced some racist issues? Oh, yes. We all do. Don't think you're going to escape that, no matter who you are, where you are, because sin is upon the land. But the thing is, everybody wants to work together. Let's say most of us really want to work together to make life better for ourselves and for others as well. And me being in Amway, direct sales, the insurance industry and all of that, I found that there are a lot of good people that really wants to help you, that go out of their way to help you and befriend you. So don't you think it's about time that we unstick ourselves to the past? No one wants to repeat the past, no matter where you are in the world. If you've gone through some form of hate, if you experience destruction, if you even experience war, we all want to live in peace and happiness. We all want to experience that joy and love. So let's not think that when we watch news or our social media channels, that it's like that everywhere, in every state, because it's not. Now, of course, it can create that persona that life is like that in these places, but it's given us a small percentage that can really be false if that's the way it's like that everywhere, because it's not. People trust me when I say this. There are a lot of places that are really, really good people. You know, and I know a lot of good people. And it doesn't matter their race. And I've dealt with everybody, because here where I live, there's Hispanics, there's black, white, there's Native Americans, there's Chinese, Asian. There's about every race there, because we're in the United States of America. And we all got to get along. And from what I'm seeing, we're doing a pretty good job of it. If we don't pay too much attention to politics, or if we don't watch certain news channels or social media stuff that says otherwise, but's giving us a false narrative. Don't you want peace? Don't you want to experience love? Don't you want to get along with everybody? Don't you want people to give you respect and you show respect in return? There's a give and take, isn't it? So I think it's time now that we let certain things go, especially hate. It's not good for our psyche. It's not good for anything except destruction. Think about it. And here's something also. No one wants to hurt anybody, actually, because they themselves want to be in peace. Nobody wants to go to jail. And I must say, yes, I have been in law enforcement. I've locked a few people up. And my experiences from yours is going to be totally different. And when I go home to Louisiana, I feel the difference in the cultures. There's a difference. And then when I come back to Oklahoma, or I go other places, but even when you think of Oklahoma, you'll think, well, the Merrill Building bombing, Timothy McVeigh, or, back in the 20s, the bombing in Tulsa, Black Wall Street. People have evolved. And sometimes they can bring trouble that way because they see things progressing and they're trying to prevent it. And they send a message to the nation. But I must say that my experiences here and among other places have been really good overall, because life is not perfect, and it never will be, because sin is upon the land. But we can all do our part and treat our fellow man and woman better than we ever have before, because we were moving in such a great direction until just recent years. Right is right. Wrong is wrong. It doesn't matter what team you're on. It's come down to right and wrong. What does your Bible say? So how are you feeling right now? I just gave you a little preview of my multicultural experience, of how I interacted with so many different people and discover how more common we are than not. So today, if you're feeling a little negative, down in the dumps, maybe a little bit depressed, here's what I encourage that you do. Pick up the phone and call somebody. If you hadn't talked to a person in over a year, it's time. Pick up the phone, give them a call. They'll be glad to hear from you. And I can tell you, this is what it's going to do for you. It's going to lift your spirits. It's going to make you feel joyful inside. You're going to get happy. And then not just that, they themselves on the other end will feel the same way, because you hadn't talked to one another in such a long time, and it would be a welcome call. And then you both hang up and feel that joy. Robert Wilkins, aka BasketballTall. Go ahead, and if you hadn't subscribed to this channel, please go ahead and do so right now. And also I encourage you, if you like what I'm talking about here, go ahead and give me a thumbs up, because that's how the algorithm works. If you press that like, subscribe, share, comment, it'll send it out to others to view as well. Thank you for listening. And just remember, where you may live, don't think that it's like that everywhere, because there are a lot of great places in this country, and there are more good people than bad. See you next time.